Our top focus this morning, as coronavirus infections in Tokyo hit a record daily high, the Japanese capital is now preparing to raise its alert level for infections to the highest of 4 stages. The number of positive cases in the Japanese capital has crept up recently. Since the beginning of November, in fact, Tokyo's daily infections have trended upwards and reached a 3-month high of 393 cases last week. On November 18th, that is Wednesday, coronavirus infections in Tokyo hit a record daily high of 493 cases. Tokyo had lowered the alert level to the second highest rank on September 10th, after the daily number of infections had come down for a summer peak of 300 to 400 cases. The record to date was 472, which was hit on August 1st. The highest alert level indicates that infections are spreading versus the current alert of infections appear to be spreading. For a city with a population of 14 million, testing is also much lower at a few thousand a day. Tokyo is likely to keep the alert level for medical preparedness, which is a separate category, at the second highest. This indicates a need to boost capacity. 1,281 patients are currently hospitalized with COVID-19 against the capacity of 2,640 beds. The nation has reported about 121,000 positive cases and 1,920 deaths so far due to COVID-19. However, Japan is yet far from the critical number of infections and deaths seen in many Western countries. Preparing to raise its alert level, the metropolitan government is considering asking some businesses to shorten their hours, according to local media reports. The announcement will be made on November 19th. Now, for more details about the coronavirus situation in Japan, our correspondent Grace Lee joins us live from Tokyo. Thanks for joining us, Grace, on this broadcast. Now, Japan, specifically Tokyo, has registered a record surge in coronavirus cases recently, and experts are now calling this the third wave. Tell us about what is being perceived as a source of this fresh surge in cases.
Well, according to medical experts, this is happening because the weather is getting cooler. People are staying indoors, meeting people indoors in not well-ventilated areas, and that's where we're seeing this spike. Now, the government alleges that a lot of this is coming from restaurants and bars, and so they do want to put additional restrictions on those facilities for now, but it's not clear what kind of measures we'll see. We are awaiting that announcement that Tokyo will be going into its highest level of alert. The last time we saw this happen, restaurants were asked to close at around 10 p.m. When the measures go even further than that, they might ask restaurants to shut at about 7 p.m. But we'll see how it progresses. For now, we are also seeing a spike in Sapporo, which is the northernmost tip of Japan. That's the area where we first saw that kind of breakout in the early stages of the COVID pandemic. And so they are already asking people to stay at home. We aren't seeing any of those measures yet here in Tokyo.
Right, just focusing a bit more on the measures that the Suga administration may take to curb the transmission. We know that economic recovery is currently every government's focus, but it is a tricky balance after all. So what kind of measures do you expect to see in Tokyo?
Well, surprisingly, they have not announced yet that they're shutting down their domestic travel program, which has been hugely controversial here. It subsidizes domestic travel for residents of Japan. So people have been able to travel outside of their cities for about half the price, or at least having 1/3 of that price compensated by the government. And of course, the government says that they haven't seen a spike in infections from that program specifically, but medical experts do say that it may have been a catalyst for the infections that we are seeing at this moment. Now, a lot of the more rural areas are becoming a little bit scared of having city travelers come to their regions, so that is causing a bit of tension here. But again, surprisingly for now, they have not announced that they are canceling or putting a hold on this program for now.
Right. My final question, Grace. The gentleman in charge of Japan's coronavirus response recently said that he senses a very strong sense of crisis. So could a national lockdown be on the agenda as well?
Well, it's not clear how Japan will respond to the coronavirus now. there haven't been a lot of measures here so far, really, except for people putting on masks. Life has been largely normal here, and they haven't seen that kind of number of deaths we've seen in places like Europe or the U.S. So now with this third wave coming, experts are saying that now is the time to put in additional measures before we get to that point that we're seeing in the U.S. and in Europe, and that people cannot be complacent, and that a high level of alert is needed. Now, we'll have to see what kind of measures that local governments take. That's what we saw the last time COVID cases spiked. It was really up to the local governments to try and put in measures, because it really did not happen from that federal government level. So a lot of residents are now turning to local leaders like Tokyo's Governor Yuriko Koike to put in these additional measures to make sure that the spread does not go further.
Right, Grace. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast and for all your inputs.